Привет, moi друзья, это Kiev. This video is going to have major spoilers for The Hedge Knight, the first of the 3 novellas chronicling the tales of Duncan Egg. I'd highly recommend you read it or audiobook it first. Harry Lloyd, the actor who played Viserys, is the narrator and he's got a very charming voice. And I know, Viserys was a tool, but there's a tool in this story, Aerion Brightflame Targaryen. And Harry uses Viserys' voice for that character, very fitting. But otherwise, his voice is very charming, especially for Dunk. It's a very well-written little story and narrated just as well. In this video, we are going to review who the 7 people were on each side of the Trial of 7 and summarize the results. Quick refresher. This is the second Trial of 7 that we know about. Maegor the Cruel had won versus the Faith, and in that one, Maegor was the only man to survive. But that's not always the case. A trial by 7 ends if the accused is killed, if the accusers are killed, if the accused admits guilt, or if the accusers withdraw their accusations. Otherwise, it ends when everyone either dies or withdraws from the fight. Trials by 7 are linked to the faith of the 7, so it's an Andal tradition. In a past video, I said that trials by combat are linked to the 7, but that's not true. Trials by combat are used across all cultures. Ned's father, Lord Rickard Stark, demanded a trial by combat in defense of his son Brandon's alleged crimes against the crown. Mad King Aerys chose fire as his champion. Crazy dude. And we also saw Thoros and Beric offer Sandor a trial by combat. Trials of 7 are the unique form of a trial by combat, unique to the faith of the 7, and since they use 7 people on each side, it's seen as an honor to the new gods, the 7-faced god. All 7 men must be appointed knights, and if you didn't know, knighthood is also related to the faith of the 7. That's why people like Ned, who worship the old gods, are not knights.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, sir.
No, sir. I'm not a knight.
The accused or the accuser can fight for himself or appoint a champion. Alright, so the trial by 7 at Ashford Tourney. Why did it happen? In short, Aerion Brightflame was beating up a Dornish puppeteer because he thought her puppet show was treasonous. Aerion's brother, Egg, didn't have a chance to run to the castle, it was too far away, so he ran to Duncan the Tall. Duncan rolls up, grabs Aerion, punches him and kicks him. It's worth noting that Duncan had a crush on this girl, but I'm not sure that mattered. The fact of the matter is, she was innocent. A knight protects the innocent, and Dunk did just that. But striking royal family is treason. In the past, the penalty was removal of the limb, so Dunk was at risk of having his hand and his foot cut off. Now before we continue, let's look at the male line of the Targaryen family tree. King Daeron II had 4 sons. 2 of them were at the tourney. 1 of Baelor's sons was competing at the tourney, and 3 of Maekar's sons were at the tourney. Maester Aemon was off studying at the Citadel. So Prince Baelor actually reminds Dunk that any knight can request a trial by combat. So he does. And then Aerion, as is his right, requests that the trial be a trial of 7. 7 on 7 instead of 1 on 1. First, let's look at Aerion's 7. We've got Aerion, his drunken brother Daeron, and his father Maekar. Maekar wanted to redeem his son's honor, Daeron for being a drunk, and Aerion for spearing a horse in an earlier joust. So Maekar joined his sons, and he commanded the 3 Kingsguard in attendance at the tourney to participate, since they were sworn to protect the royal family, so that makes 6. Now let's go over to Dunk. Dunk's got 1, himself. When he first showed up to the tourney grounds, he ran into Sir Steffon Fossaway practicing, or rather beating up his squire, his cousin, Raymond Fossaway. So Dunk had chatted with them a couple times. Upon hearing of the trial of 7, Steffon told Dunk that he would fight for him, and that he would find 5 more men to join them. Keep in mind, you have to be a knight, so Raymond could not fight, he was just a squire. Raymond warned Dunk that Steffon was doing this for glory, but the trial was for Dunk's life, so Raymond and Egg try to find men as well. Raymond and Egg return with the Humphreys. Humphrey Harding had prior beef with Aerion, because in an earlier joust in the tourney, Aerion intentionally speared Humphrey's horse. He killed it, and Humphrey broke his leg, but he could still fight because trials by 7 start out on horse, so he could fight as long as he did not fall off of his horse. Humphrey Harding brought along his brother-in-law, Humphrey Beesbury. But let's go back to Humphrey Harding. Humphrey Harding had defeated 14 formidable knights in the first day of the tourney alone, including Sir Donald of the Kingsguard. And these 2 Humphreys together actually faced one another and broke 12 lances before Humphrey Harding finally won. So they're both legit. To be honest, everyone in this trial is pretty legit, with the exception of drunk Aerion Targaryen. Next, Robin Riesling shows up. He's the dude that rode 3 times in the tourney even after losing his helm. He was riding without a helm. Brave, stupid, call it how you may. He was a grizzled old warrior though, no doubt about that. And even better, the Laughing Storm, Sir Lionel Baratheon. Sir Lionel would laugh like a madman while jousting. And you know how some of those nobles have fancy crests on top of their helms? Like his own, stag antlers, wings, stuff like that. Well, those crests are often made with gold, silver, or have gems like rubies. They're very ornate, costing time and money to make, and Sir Lionel would intentionally knock them off his opponent's helms and throw them into the crowd. Basically, this dude is yet another awesome Baratheon. So Egg recruited these guys, and Dunk thinks that both sides now have 6. But Stefan Fossaway shows back up to have Raymond put on his gear, and tells Dunk that he's the 7th. The 7th for the other side. He's fighting for the prince, and they're going to make him a lord. What a bastard. So Dunk is down to 5. Raymond is pissed, but any knight can make a knight, so Sir Lionel Baratheon knighted him, and Raymond created his own sigil. Instead of a red Fossaway apple, he chose green. Dunk still only had 6 though, and if you can't find 7, you are automatically found guilty of the crime.
Do I have a volunteer?
I think we can assume that no one is willing to...
I'll stand for the dwarf.
Out of nowhere, to the surprise of many, especially his brother Maekar, the Prince of Dragonstone, Hand of the King, heir to the Iron Throne, rolls up wearing his son's armor. Baelor Breakspear, the man who unseated Daemon Blackfyre at the age of 17, a proven badass, and he was going to fight for Dunk against his brother and nephews. His brother Maekar was offended, but Baelor had a good point, quote, "This man protected the weak, as every true knight must. Let the gods determine if he was right or wrong." Alright, so those are the teams. Close out now if you don't want spoilers. And even if you continue this video, I still recommend getting the book or audiobook. It's an exciting battle, very well written, and as I said earlier, it translates very well into audiobook form due to Harry Lloyd's great narration. First off, Baelor recommended that they use Tourney lances instead of war lances. Tourney lances don't have metal points. They are 12 feet long instead of 8, so if your aim is true, you can knock your opponent off his horse and avoid getting speared by the war lance. When you're still a horse, you have a significant advantage over someone who's on his feet. Here's the one detail of the fight I'm going to give you. After the first pass, Dunk's horse turns about in the mud and slides on its haunches. Dunk yells to his horse, "Thunder! Up! Thunder!" I mentioned this for a reason. We'll come back to this at the end. So skipping the rest of the details, here are the results. So the Fossaways matched up against one another, and they matched each other blow for blow. They both lived. So Robin Riesling unhorsed drunk Daron on their first pass, so he withdrew his accusations as he told Dunk he would do ahead of time. He didn't want to fight in the first place. Sir Donald of Duskendale killed Humphrey Beesbury on the very first pass, and Sir Humphrey Harding died of injuries a few days later. But Dunk beat up Aerion Brightflame. He made him verbally withdraw his accusations instead of killing him, and he could have. Dunk is almost too good for his own good. But here's the worst part of the trial. So the 3 Kingsguard couldn't attack Baelor, since they're sworn to defend the royal family. They could only kinda defend themselves, and he did some damage to them, but his main fight was versus his brother, Maekar. After the fight, they're looking at Dunk's wounds, and someone says to pull the lance out of him and dump oil into the wound. But thankfully Baelor walks up and says a word, "Wine, not oil, that'll kill him." So Baelor Breakspear saved Dunk's life a second time, once with a sword and once with a word. But then they remove his helm, and half of his skull falls out. He falls into Dunk's arms, and once again Dunk cries out, "Up! Up!" just as he had said to his horse Thunder in the melee. But Prince Baelor dies shortly thereafter, the prince, the heir to the throne. What's wild is that Prince Daron actually foresaw this. He told Dunk a couple times about this vision, but you know how visions are, they're vague. He just saw Dunk standing above a dying dragon. Worth noting that dragons in prophecies often refer to Targaryens, not actual dragons. Man, sad stuff as usual from our boy George. But it's cool because this stuff isn't supposed to be happy, he tells it like it is. There's a silver lining though. Before the trial, the small folk cheered on Dunk, to his surprise. They did it for the same reason Baelor Breakspear had Dunk's back, because Dunk was a knight who remembered his vows, an incredible dude. So what about Baelor's brother, Maekar? Despite partially blaming himself for accidentally killing his own brother, and partially blaming Dunk for the trial in the first place, Maekar saw the bigger picture, the truth of what really happened. His son Aerion is insane, and Dunk is a man of honor, a true knight. So Maekar officially asked Dunk to take on his youngest son, Aegon, or Egg, as his squire. Egg, or Aegon the Unlikely, fourth son of a fourth son, eventually becomes King Aegon V. Dunk becomes Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, and they both die at the tragedy of Summerhall. Dunk the Lunk, thick as a castle wall.